almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day that could get, through this area. Because the mountains, you gotta remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift. And so we got him on there. The thing was too big, we couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while.
Really foul.
Oh, it was like a combination because of the, how do you put that, the persistence of a skunk smell. But once the helicopter came in, dropped its little hook, and off he goes. The communication was sent out that we had a very large, possible human creature.
There you are in the hills of Afghanistan. How many troop members are you with?
We had 6 on my crew. When we say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base. I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. What I could see that it did have the 6 fingers. I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. We estimated at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing. Basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured it was around 1,100 pounds.
Of course we're upset. That's a given. Okay. We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after-action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted.
How many fingers?
6 toes.
6 toes.
And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has, I don't know what it's called, but it's
Like a fungus on
their nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly. That's what they look like.
As we showed you in the clip, the radio operator checked in and gave the report, and the unit was told to stand by as Central Command was about to dispatch 2 helicopters to them. They were told that the Giant would be loaded on one of the choppers, and then they would follow in the other chopper for debriefing. The shooter told us that when the chopper landed, they loaded the Giant into a very large cargo net. The first chopper towing a Giant left, and then they boarded the second helicopter and followed. When they returned to their base at the Kandahar province in Afghanistan, they were debriefed and told to keep all of this under wraps. They were forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which essentially would prohibit them from talking about this to anyone. It is with great reluctance on the shooter's part that he has come forward. He believes that people have the right to know what is going on this planet, that the supernatural is real, and that the startling and unsettling fact that a remnant of a legendary Nephilim are still on the earth may be. I mean, if there are 15-footers or 18-footers roaming the planet, and our military has brought them down, I mean, we have a right as American citizens. I mean, this isn't classified military stuff. This is something that we need to know, and it points back to the biblical prophetic narrative. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, here's my personal opinion. My personal opinion is if it points that the Bible's accurate, they don't want it. If it goes against Darwinian evolution, it's not to be spoken of.
So you're out in the boonies running around looking for high-value targets?
Correct. Okay. And we're doing those operations, and as we're getting into firefights, we're getting into different scrimmages, you want to put it that way, we would come back to the base, and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first, I didn't think anything of it. And come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair. And a special unit had come in and wanted this target. What we'd heard that they had killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave. And it was common knowledge among the military to hear this.
Now, when you say common knowledge, what do you mean? I mean, how does that work?
Years later, come to find out, when I had returned from Afghanistan and had met other military members that had not been there in the operations with me, if you would bring up the Giant of Kandahar, they knew about it. When you first hear it, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be a hoax. But then after things go down a certain way, and you keep hearing it, you start to realize it's not a joke.
Okay, just before we start gathering intelligence here on the cheap, look right here. You can see that people will get into Harry Potter, but the Bible talks about these spirits kind of coming up out of the ground in the end times and things happening. Well, anyway, we're going to go to Korea real fast and see how we can gather from leakers little bits, little bubbles of intelligence to the news media and apply that to when the truth really does wash out. And kind of by working in reverse, we can try to analyze this giant story. Well, here it is. How do you start a war in Korea? Well, first of all, you have no plan. There's no national compelling interest. There's no exit strategy. People say it's going to be a bloodbath. You'll end up getting people killed needlessly. All you'll do is rip the nation in half and cut and run. So how do you pull something like this off? This is how we're going to study the Kandahar Giants. First of all, you get a pretty boy like this saying it's a compelling interest. I guarantee we're going to take care of our soldiers. There's going to be in and out. It's not going to be much of a deal. And we're not going to tear the country in half and just make the equivalent of Cheney and Halliburton rich back in those days. How do you do it? First thing you do, you get helicopters. You make some major strikes. Then you release photographs like this of atrocities on our side. Then you let that stew. You release photographics of atrocities on their side of this guy getting his head chopped off. You mismanage it. You bungle it so bad it's screwed up. You tear the nation in half and you leave them. We're pretty good at that in the United States and Canada. Now, how are we going to use this information? Well, what stopped the Korean War was leakers saying the guys aren't even dressed for winter. They're actually freezing to death. Some are inhaling gasoline, trying to stay alive. The war is being mismanaged. We have no compelling interest. And finally, well, let's take another look here. Vietnam, they said, don't go to Vietnam. You'll do the same thing. You'll go over, you'll rip the nation in half. They swore, no, we won't. It'll be a bloodbath. No, you're going to make people rich. What do? Repeat after me. You get a couple of pretty boys like this here. You get the helicopters up. You have helicopter strikes on the civilians. And what do? Right. You release some photographs of atrocities on both sides. And then you start crying crocodile tears. I don't know how this happened. And then you release a phony mission statement. Look at this horse's ass mission statement, if you will, right here, that caused untold, hundreds of thousands of people to be dead and sprayed with Agent Orange. Read this thing for yourself. And of course, they're not going to do anything wrong. No one ever gets in trouble. But what stopped this war? Leakers leaking things about not just atrocity, but what was going on. We're going to use the same techniques on the Kandahar Giant in Afghanistan and try to flesh out, hopefully, some little bubbles of truth in just a moment. Let's have another example, shall we? We come along with another example.